It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to. Lots to talk about. The chaos machine, well, full gear. Evidently, Donald Trump wants to rename the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. And again, this is the kind of jingoistic stuff that will grab the base by the snarklies and get them all lathered up and going, yeah, Gulf of America. Yeah, just like they want to rename Denali in Alaska to back to Mount McKinley. This idea of naming stuff, this idea of creating division by throwing nonsense out there. And it's meant specifically to keep us focused on the shiny thing. When I saw this, I'm going, wow, that's classic. It's classic Trump, because what's coming? So my eyes are going, okay, what is it? Is it him being sentenced? Is it some else bad gonna drop? Because when he does this stuff, and we're gonna have to learn the MO again, when the crazy comes, something bad's on the way. And the thing is that I find interesting about Trump and the people in his sphere is they're never anywhere near the same page. And still the base, blind allegiance. For instance, Trump says that the transition with the Biden folks is not going smoothly. Because everyone wants to believe that Joe Biden and Biden's people are going to do what Trump did to Biden. Not true. In fact, Trump's own chief of staff has said, going as planned. Everything's fine. So who do you believe? The guy who's the pathological liar and who has a very long track record? Or literally anyone else? And the sad reality is this is what we're going to have to wade through over the next 4 years. And my producer and I were talking about this the other day going, look, I want to not be on this train of focusing on the crazy. I think we really do have to focus on how bad the policies are going to be, because there are going to be some things that are going to happen. How bad are the appointees going to run these organizations into the ground? And how is the right-wing message changing? It's interesting that you start listening to some of the old Republicans, the Ann Coulters of the world. They're starting to sound an awful lot like me, talking about how the oligarchy has screwed this country up, how we keep bailing out the wealthy and screwing over the work. It almost sounds like Ann Coulter and some of these Republicans, have reinvented themselves and are turning into, well, liberal Democrats. I know, heaven forbid. And this is where I'm reaching out to my Democratic friends, saying, you better get your message straight because someone's going to steal it. You better get your message in gear. You better get out there and start hammering on it because, well, your ground is about ready to be stolen from you. And Republicans are great at that. Understand the anger at the wealth class, the anger at the elite class is very real and warranted. And they're trying to understand that's how they got the power. Understand that's the Republican Party's bread and butter. So they're going to say a lot of words. There's going to be a lot of words. There's going to be a lot of pointing and saying, look over there. But the actions of actually solving the problems never going to happen. Republicans are not the party of the working class, no matter how many times they try and tell us, because their votes aren't there. Now you're going to go, but Rick, there were some that came along on this Social Security bill. There were some. And you go, yeah, there were some. Because they understand what it means to their constituents. They understand that the police and the teacher lobby and a lot of people that vote for them wanted this bill. And this has been decades in the making. That Ronald Reagan screwed things up so badly that here we are all these years later still having to deal with the aftermath. What I would also like to see, if a Republican really wants to be helpful, go and undo taxing unemployment benefits. Go do that, because that's something else Reagan did. And oh, by the way, if you're really going to be the party of the working class, how about we return reward to work? How about we start taxing billionaires? How about we start putting that money into Social Security? How about we start doing things that are going to encourage wage growth, like strengthening the ability of workers to collectively bargain for the profits that their labor creates? No, you're not going to hear that, because you're going to continue to hear the same old nonsense rhetoric of, the invisible hand and market economies and all that stuff, because they know what that means. They know it means the wealth class will continue to have all the power, but they get to stake out a different message, because they understand that they've gone too far. The anger, as I say, is real. Working people are fed up. Working people are angry. Working people are tired of working more and longer hours for less wages and less benefits. Now, if Republicans really want to be the party of the working class, put up some legislation. So where we're at is, I'm tired of the cat laser. I'm tired of the divisive nonsense that's thrown out like chum in the water to get us to focus on anything other than what's happening. And I'm tired of Republicans telling me how much they care about me when there's no legislation to help me. There's tax cuts. There are going to be tax cuts for the wealthy. There's going to be deregulation for corporations. There's going to be going after the immigrants for the angry. But there's nothing that's going to make lives better in their agenda thus far. Whereas with Joe Biden, Biden's policies were moving in the right direction. So Trump is going to inherit an economy that is doing fairly well. Even though Trump keeps saying it's a disaster, it's the end, it's all bad, I guarantee you, come January 20th, this will be the greatest economy ever, because Trump will stamp his name all over it. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, I've been focused on this idea of running government like a business. And a lot of responses from you guys out there. I'm going to talk with my good friend Matias Vernengo when we come back about should we run government like a business? Back after this.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So a lot of emails on my opening the other day on not wanting to run the country as a business. And oddly enough, I got a lot of working people going, no, we need business principles in our government. Our spending's out of control. Our deficits are crazy. Our grandchildren are going to be saddled with massive debt. You just don't understand business. So maybe I don't. And that's why I've asked my good friend Matias Vernengo to come share some thoughts. He is an economics professor at Bucknell University, one of my go-to guys on all business matters. Matias, thanks for taking time for us.
Oh, thank you for having me, Rick.
So help me here, because, I've got people saying that you don't know shine. And maybe I don't, but I don't know that I want my government run like a business. I don't think I want short-term thinking to long-term problems, but help me here. Do we want corporate governance?
So let's put it this way. So one of the things that they might, practical examples, that they may want to run as a business. They want to privatize the postal service. So if you, are going to run it for profit, and that's what business means, you're running it for profit, what it means is that some places in which there is no money to be made to send a letter every so often in a place that it's very distant and problematic and costly, to keep sending that service there. So you will get the service if you're rich and can pay a humongous amount of money to get, your mail. If not, you're out. You don't got any mail. And that's the idea of for-profit, is that business and the services you get only will reach you if the private sector can make a buck out of it. The question is, are there things that we as a society think that we should all have that are essential even if you cannot pay for them, even if you cannot pay the market value for them? Because the profit comes with market value for things. So they have to get their cost and some normal profit. In our case, I should say, normal profit has been for a long while very high profits for the very wealthy, but that's another discussion. So the point is that governments often are not run as businesses, not because they're inefficient, is that the criteria for efficiency is very different. If you want everybody to have, and I'm not even going to the more sort of directly, affect our lives like health. I'm going to say, the road system, transportation, your ability to go from one place to the other. Do you think that, you have a snowstorm and, the private sector will come and clean it up in front of, your house for free? They're going to make it, but it has to be for profit. And hence the market value of that, if you live far away and whatnot, will be much, 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 much higher than, than what you are probably paying now, because it's subsidized in many ways and done by the government. So there are many things that we assume that that the government should do. For the right wingers, I should say, who wants the private sector to run the army? So are we going to leave defense to the private sector? Is the border that they want shut, going to be run by the private sector? Or do we subsidize that? Because we give the army, top-notch health. We give them, all of the things that probably all of us should have. Why? Because we're assuming that that's a public service that they do. They do a public service, and hence they receive, the funds from the government, from all of us.
No, health, like you pointed out, health, job training, retirement security, go to housing, food, go down the list.
They live in socialist. Socialism is for the wealthy and for the army. And that's exact for corporations. We give great transfer. So it's socialism for the very wealthy, and in the case of the army, for the army, and we all agree on that. And then it's capitalism for everybody else. So the idea that we have to run the government as a business, let me put it politely, it's idiotic.
No, and we're heading. I wrote a piece on our Substack page. Welcome, fascism, American style, because it's where we're heading. When you've got a lot of these corporate CEOs and a lot of these billionaires, you got Doge Boy running around thinking he knows how to run everything. You're going to get every bad idea that's come out of a think tank that billionaires have funded, and every wet dream that's come out of a boardroom where corporate CEOs, if only we could deregulate enough, if only we could cut taxes enough, if only we could screw those workers enough, I think we're gonna live this reality for these next 4 years.
Oh, I think so too. But in all fairness, as you know, and we talked several times about this in your show, the trends for this come from, Ronald Reagan. So it's not new. I think that there is a question of degree. Trump has crossed lines that others have not crossed, but, the Republican Party has, moved in this direction since Reagan said that, government is the problem. and they, as the joke goes, they Republicans do think that the government is the problem. It's inefficient, and when they win the election, they go and prove it. And so, I think we're going to have that. I think they're going to be inefficient on doing that, hopefully. But I think they're going to create a wreckage, in the process. So even if they're not capable of doing all that they want, they're going to destroy a lot of what took, generations to build, to, protect. And so it's going to be very problematic. They're going to try to cut spending in many areas. They're going to, as they affect social transfers, they're gonna try to cut, and make it difficult for people that need, say, food stamps, SNAP and other programs harder to get. So we're gonna have, more things that are difficult to see. I mean, I grew up in developing countries, in Argentina and Brazil. You see homeless people in developing countries. It wasn't something that was as, I've been in the U.S. now for almost 30 years, 29 and 30 in September. And the number of homeless people in this country is something that it's unconscionable. It's not very different than if you live in a developing country these days. And so we're going to see more of that. People that are hungry, kids that have no access, not access to good education. We're already doing in certain sense some of those things. We do deliver to a good chunk of our population, third world services.
So, I guess you'll agree with me that the people who are going to suffer most are going to be the marginalized, the vulnerable, the handicapped, and the low-wage workforce. Those are going to be front and center, the targets of their ire.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the part of the story is, I think, that over the last 40 years, there has been, and it's not just the Republican Party on that, I'm sorry to say, that has been sort of a deconstruction of the New Deal and the programs that, were complemented in the 60s with, Kennedy Johnson. And so the vulnerable that were in that period that goes from the 30s to the 60s, 70s were receiving sort of a safety net that minimized some of the edges of capitalism. Capitalism has good things. Business has a role in society. It does promote certain things that we do want. So people are not incorrect in saying we do need an efficient private sector that can promote profits and so on and so forth, provided we don't allow them to, every time they crash the economy, which they do very often if you don't, regulate them. And we're going to have a lot of the regulations. So we're going to give, he is the crypto president. He is promising to be the crypto president. And always, in his case, also, he is, the crony version of this stuff because his son is involved. His kids are involved in crypto. So it's the corrupt version. So people say there is corruption in developing countries. Not even close to this kind of stuff, because here you have the same sort of nepotism of connections or all of those things, but the amount of money that will be involved is much bigger than what can happen in Argentina. The whole of Argentinian, foreign debt, for example, to give a big country with lots of debt, the biggest debt on the IMF, it's $300 billion. It's not even half of the budget that we have on defense. The United States can pay it and move on, And that's a large country with 45 million people and the largest debt in the developing world, And so the amount of corruption that we have, when we have corruption here, we talk trillions of dollars. This guy spent, what, $200 million? I'm talking Elon Musk, to buy an election. Yeah. And already made considerably more than that. In with the change in the stock value of his companies. So it is it's already, we do have a government that it's run for business. What we actually need is to take the business and the business interest out of government. And the fact that people repeat that is sort of concerning, that they don't understand how much this government is a government for business, by business, and whatever is the other phrase,
for and by business.
Yes,
absolutely. But here's the thing, and look,
complete perversion of the democratic system.
But here's the thing. I hear that. I want a businessman, but Donald Trump, maybe the mom and pop in town who's got to make a payroll, has got to look his workforce in the face, and is trying to leave a business legacy for his children. Maybe that guy, I can go, okay, well, maybe we'll run it like his business. But come on, Donald Trump.
Well, two things. Of course, Donald Trump is, corrupt, sort of felon even. He has been condemned by justice and whatnot, although that, will soon vanish and whatnot. But the other thing that it's problematic about that is that also the government is not a mom and pop's business. The government is, if you're a mom and pop business, if you're a household, you have a restriction. It's very hard for you to, to spend more than you have, because if you get indebted, you have to have then a stream of income that allows you to pay not only your regular stuff, but the debt that you have, and your debt will depend on what happens in the market, and so on and so forth. So it's a dangerous thing. Private debt is, people don't understand that. Private debt is very dangerous. That's why we protect certain kinds of debt. In the 30s, we protected, for example, your bank accounts. Why? Because, otherwise, we'll have financial crisis all the time and people going, bankrupt and so on and so forth. The government doesn't go bankrupt. The government can sort of, have problems, but the government never goes bankrupt, not in its own currency. And the government can do a lot of things that actually, contrary to the idea that, if you have debt, you're burdening future generations. The debt is something that allows us to build things for future generations. The government has an ability to spend money, and when it spends money, it makes things happen that wouldn't happen. And with that, it generates, income in the future. So I'll give you an example. People don't understand this. The government said we need to win a war. War is when people understand this, because it's existential. We have a war. The Germans are going to get an atomic bomb. We need to do it faster than them. So we spend all the resources, no concern of how much we're going to spend. We had deficits overall of more than 25% of GDP. By the way, the large ones now are like 5-6%. So this is 5 times the size of those. And we say, we're going to put the best scientists all there, and in 2 years, we're going to get a bomb. By the way, that bomb, we could be using it, the technology to have, nuclear energy, that it's good for the environment and so on and so forth. They did the computer. We are only doing this because the Department of Defense did. The internet, the computer, all of this, none of this, nothing was done by the private sector. But we allowed the private sector to get the profits out of selling this stuff to all of us. So it's because of the government that we have these things. It's because they spend money, they accumulated that, and that debt and those deficits allowed us to do all of those things. So this is not moms and pops businesses. This is a government that must, spend money, that must, run deficits under certain circumstances, and that will have debt. That debt is secure. The debt is not a record of what we will have to, and what we're burdening in future generations. It's the opposite. Right. It's our ability to create wealth for future generations. So that's the fundamental distinction. And of course, Trump, he will generate that. Not all debt is created equal. So there is good debt that we, deficits and debt that we run to promote the well-being of society. And that happened with the Roosevelt era. And we accumulated a lot of that since Reagan. But we did that doing what?
Creating a billionaire class.
Worsening the conditions of the working class. Yeah. Exactly.
No, we've created the largest billionaire class in history. And inequality is at all-time highs. And it's only going to get worse with a businessman in the White House, and not a good one. But you said something during the break that caught my attention, and I think is extremely important for those people who think, yeah, I want this businessman in place. And you said his ability for survival.
Well, so he's a business. If you want a businessman, you should want one that is efficient. So he went bankrupt a few times, 3 times, I don't know. But he does have an instinct. He has an instinct for survival.
That's it.
And so he's very good at surviving things. He can do. He has survived all of this reasonable sort of prosecutions that were in the nick of time. I should say. He tried a coup. A very incompetent coup, I should say, very poorly done because he didn't have the army behind him. The Pentagon and the generals were not with him. But, he did try to stay in power. So he tried a coup. He should have been, sort of prosecuted, more firmly by that. He tried to rob the election. We have the recording. He's talking with the Secretary of State, of State or whoever it was in Georgia, saying, I need 11,000 votes or whatever the number of votes he needed. So there are many things. He was caught and he's been, for it's not rape. It's for whatever it was. He was pissed off the other day because somebody said rape. But, there are many crimes that he has committed and he has been bankrupt. One thing that, both in his, public life and in his private business life, he has been incredibly successful at is the ability to survive. So I don't know how much money he makes, but he's capable of surviving those things and looking like he is successful.
Yeah.
He's not, but he's a survivor, and so he will survive. He'll do well. His kids will thrive. But as you said when we were talking, but not necessarily the kids of the working class.
And that was my point. When I heard that, immediately I go, that's a perfect frame, because he will survive. He will be okay. The rest of us, maybe not so much, especially the working class of this country, who's going to take it on the chin over these next 4 years as they go after job programs and social spending and all of the things
they're
that
going to go for
do
Social
help.
Security. They're going to go for Medicare, Medicaid. They're going to go for the whole thing. Also he is a person that we know that he has nothing he says can be sort of taken seriously. So he says, I'm not going to go after Social Security. He will go after Social Security. They lie about everything. He's it's part of who he is. So it's one of those paradoxes, that he, Christian people vote for him, and he's obviously not a Christian man. And, people that are really pro-business, think that he should be the businessman running this country when he's a, terrible businessman, with a track record of bankrupting every single business that, he, put his hand on. And he survives. Then, the shareholders, the workers, the contractors, all of those guys, are the ones that actually lose. And so we're going to be tired of winning. He winning, us losing.
Exactly. And ultimately, we're going to be left holding the bag. But Matias, I appreciate your input, your thoughts. Good stuff as always.
Oh, thank you for having me, Rick.
Our good friend Matias Vernengo. Want to hear your thoughts. Still on the bandwagon of we need to run things like a business? Let me leave you with one last thought. And this is the one that every person who's brought this up to me has responded in the same way. Think about the company that you work for, the boss that you work for. Do you want that guy running the country? I want to hear it. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So got a bunch of angry emails from listeners who were shocked to learn that Elon Musk paid into the Social Security Trust Fund for, just about a minute for the whole year. And that's all he's going to pay for the entire year, while the people cleaning up after him and the people going to work and making him all that money, they're going to pay every single day of the year, all 365 days. And then next year, they get to do it again, where one minute. Again, this is why I come back to we need to scrap the cap, tax all income is the same. So people like Musk, well, they pay into the system. Some good news this week, though. January 5th, Joe Biden signed the Social Security Fairness Act. Lots of dignitaries in the room, and one of the folks who had the good honor to be with the president, my good friend Alex Lawson, was there. Alex is the executive director of Social Security Works. This right in his wheelhouse. So, Alex, thanks for taking time for us.
Always my pleasure, Rick.
So let's start with this. What was it like to be in the president's presence? What was the event like? What was the feel?
It's first of all, you have to understand that this policy it repealed an inequity that affected teachers, firefighters, and police officers, and it was put in place by Ronald Reagan and the Republicans 41 years ago, and it reduced teachers, police officers, and firefighters' Social Security benefits by significant amounts, hundreds of dollars a month. This is an issue that every time I would go out and give a speech somewhere, this is the first question that would be asked. A teacher who said, I have worked my entire life as a public servant teaching children. I didn't find out until I retired that my Social Security was going to be reduced by $350 or so a month. I didn't know. Somewhere along the line, I signed some paperwork And I didn't realize that the state that I was in made me have this, annoying, more than annoying, evil, iniquitous is what I kept saying. It was Ronald Reagan's hatred of public employees. That's what this policy was. It was designed to hurt public employees and to diminish their power. So that feeling is more important even than anything, is that it's a room full of teachers, police officers, firefighters, their union representatives, and the activists who have spent literally decades fighting against this wrong policy. And President Biden signed that into law and got rid of it. It was a really powerful and profound event, and I was proud to be there. I know we'll dig into it a little bit. It was bipartisan. So there were Republicans sitting in the room, and what they brought to the table was not allowing us to pay for it by taxing billionaires, right? So it got through, and we signed it into law. So I'm going to be proud and happy of that.
It's a good bill. It's a good direction. But again, there's some problems that have been thrown at me, and I want to help clarify some of them, because the number one, response I've gotten from people over this is it's not paid for. And given the fact that Social Security's in the trouble that it's in over the long term, where the potentially in several years down the road, it's going to, potentially cut the amount of benefits. Isn't this going to help, make that shortfall sooner? Because I look at this, and you said there were Republicans who signed on. My mind immediately goes, yeah, because they want to destroy Social Security. So this is almost a poison pill in their mind. So it's a good thing they support it, because they do want to destroy it. Any thoughts?
So I think you're giving the Republicans like a little too much credit, that they're playing chess. Most of them are playing checkers. It's always Veep, never House of Cards. There's a few of them who are strategic. But really what happened is the cops and the firefighters have been hammering these Republicans, and they answered. But more important even and teachers, but really for the Republicans, I do think the police officer unions just hammering at them was the main reason that they acted. But what their job in their eyes was, this was going to get done because the power of the grassroots had built to such a level that we were going to get rid of WEP GPO. There's multiple Democratic bills that get rid of WEP GPO. That's what the policies are called, WEP and GPO. But it's easiest to just call it WEP GPO and think of it as the thing Reagan did that cut Social Security benefits for teachers, firefighters, and police officers.
You're like taxing unemployment benefits that Reagan did as well. But when you talk about these things, the windfall elimination provision and the government pension offset, what do these things mean when they see them? What was that? And now that it's gone, how's it going to affect these 2.8 million cops and firefighters and teachers and such?
So WEP GPO is the whole idea of it. Let me actually just finish the one thing of what the Republicans' goal was, right? So they knew that we were going to get rid of WEP GPO.
Right.
They saw the writing on the wall. And so what they did is attach themselves to one version of it that specifically didn't allow us to tax billionaires to pay for it, right? So their thing was to allow the benefit increase across the finish line, but not the tax increase to pay for it. So all Social Security bills, you just have to think of them. They have two sides, right? You have benefits and you have revenue. And what we say is that you need to expand benefits. You need to increase benefits for everyone, but it included for teachers, firefighters, and police officers. It eliminated WEP GPO. And then you pay for it by getting billionaires to pay the same rate as the rest of us. If you increase benefits without taking more money in from billionaires, then what you do is you hasten the date of exhaustion of the trust fund.
Right.
And that's what you were talking about. Right now, it's around a decade. So right around 2035, if Congress does nothing, then there's a 17% benefit cut for everyone. It's a huge, huge thing.
Right. And I've seen upwards of 21% being that number as well.
And the date and the percentage sort of fluctuate based on how the economy is doing, but they never move that much. So it's right around there. It'll be just about a decade from now. And it'll be right around 17.
Yeah, right when I go to retire.
And what this did is it actually took about 6 months of that solvency, right? So if the projection was at 10 years, now it's at 9.5 years. So it paid for the expansion by putting it out onto everyone on Social Security instead of the billionaires who actually caused the problem, both WEP GPO under Reagan and the reason that we have to do something in a decade. So I think, we chalk this up as a win, but it's also a foreshadow or a harbinger of the big fight, right? Like the battle lines are the same. The Republicans will not allow us to tax their billionaires at the same rate as the rest of us. Like that is their red line. They know what their job is. It's to protect their billionaire donors.
Yep.
And so, yes, it brought that fight sooner to us, but also that is the fight that we're in the middle of already. Like the Doge caucus that we talked about. This is the whole thing. They, and I do this and I'm pretty sure people can follow, but if you turn on CNBC or if you listen to Wall Street Journal or Bloomberg, right, the financial press, you'll hear they say it very openly. If you give a giant tax cut to the wealthiest people and corporations, which they want, and Donald Trump is going to do, then the 10-year bonds, right, the market will say, oh, well, then there's going to be an enormous amount of U.S. debt that's going to build up in 10 years. The price of those bonds falls or the yield goes up. But what matters is that's bad for rich people. And so then they say, so we have to cut Social Security benefits. That's the only way we can deal with the debt problem. And you're like, you just did the debt problem by giving all the money to the rich people.
And this is why I think I said a moment ago, why I think this is the poison pill. The reason the Republicans supported it is because they view it as a poison pill. Because this is what they do. This is what they've always done. This isn't new, in my opinion.
So I can't see it in the metaphor of a poison pill because I feel it's just they did what their job was, which was protect the billionaires from getting their taxes increased. And it didn't stop something good happened. It just wasn't all good.
Right. But long term, the thing that they hate, Social Security, is going to suffer. That's the win. That's the point. That's where I'm at. So,
but think of it this way, because I can see where you're coming from. And it's true. Like, this is not my favorite policy. My favorite policy is you do the whole thing at once. But we're going to have this fight either in a decade or now 9.5 years, right? That they didn't do anything except hasten the fight. They is the Republicans. We're going to have this fight with the Republicans no matter what. In fact, we're having the fight right now, and I relish the fight.
Absolutely.
And the reason, relish the fight.
The reason I go in this direction is because it's going to harm the very people that voted for them. All of the red hats who are angry, and look, the anger is real. It's justified. I just think it's misplaced, and the people that they've put their trust in are going to be the ones that harm them, and I think this is a part of that.
I don't disagree with you, because what you're pointing out is the people who benefit from this. So the teachers, firefighters, and police officers who were wept and GPO'd and now are not, their benefits will automatically go down by 17% in the future.
Yep.
Right? So their benefits, they get a benefit increase now, which is good, but their benefits are also going to be automatically cut slightly, half a year sooner. So the thing that is critical to me is not acknowledging, or it's important to tell the truth about yes, this is what happened. It's a bipartisan bill. When you have a bipartisan bill, it's not going to be all good because the Republicans were involved. Sometimes when you have a bipartisan bill, it just makes it all bad. This is not all bad, but every cop, every firefighter, and every teacher who won this battle through just amazing organizing and just getting in there have to now turn around. And this is what happened when we organized and won on the multi-employer pension fight. So I'm hopeful. The people who fought, we were involved with all, mine workers, Teamsters, Nancy Altman, the president of Social Security, works as an expert on private pensions as well, works with the Pension Rights Center. And the organizing that led to that win, which was an amazing win, sort of like WebGPO. I would not have put money on this happening, just like I would not have put money on us winning multi-employer pensions at 100%. Yeah, right? No haircut. No one would have bet on that one. But we fought, we organized, we were ready, and when the opportunity arose, we got it done. But then the key is that the union members who, really won were like, we need to actually just turn this into the army that's fighting to expand Social Security. Because if we win on our pension, but then the billionaires destroy Social Security, that's not a win.
Exactly.
We need to roll this momentum into the larger campaign. And that's what gives me the most hope. Is that in that room on Sunday with President Biden, that's the feeling that was most present for me. And in discussions with the leaders of the WebGPO world, that is the goal, to turn this organizing army and just, aim it right at the big fight against the billionaires coming to destroy Social Security.
No, I'm thrilled to hear that. I think that's great, because I think the big fight is getting that revenue that we desperately need and have desperately needed for decades, where it belongs, and that is then the fund to help take care of generations retiring. So let me ask you this, because I get a lot of response about people. Well, this is government picking winners and losers. This was government picking winners and losers during the Reagan years, and it was workers who were going to be the losers. Do you see this as something that can be used as as something to divide working people, in that the comments will be, well, they're getting something that they didn't pay into, something that I'm not getting? Do you see this as something that can be used divisively?
Everything, can be, but you actually hit it correctly, which is, so the answer is yes, it's right. The billionaires are always like, hey, why do those workers get pensions? You should be mad at those workers who get pensions.
And we're not asking, how do I get a pension?
Yeah, be like, no, be mad at the bosses who don't give you a pension. Come on, we all want pensions. So they'll always try, right? The oldest trick of tyrants is to get us to point our fingers at each other so we don't see them just robbing us. But the truth of this one is the iniquitous, I'm sorry, I keep saying the word. I said it on Blue Sky, right, from the White House, and then it's just been with me. But whatever, it was a wrong. It was a wrong that was done to these workers. And that was exactly when the winners and losers were picked. That was Ronald Reagan busting the air traffic controller union, right? That was Ronald Reagan busting unions and picking using the coercive power of the state to help to work to destroy the power of organized labor. And we're still paying for that, years later. The organized labor is absolutely powerful, and there's this resurgence. But, the difference between organized labor before the Reagan neoliberal, ball-peen hammer against them and after is really real. So the picking winners and losers happened 1980, 81, 82, 83. And this fixes that. So again, what we have to really focus in on is it's not the teachers who, we're talking about teachers who do play by the rules. They play by the rules. If you read the Social Security actuary, you're not going to see anywhere in there like, oh, the hastened solvency crisis is caused by teachers. They don't. They specifically list all of the myths. It's not because people are living longer. Yeah. It's not because immigrants are taking benefits. That can't happen. It's not because of the worker to retiree ratio. It's literally only because since 1980, since the Reagan Thatcher neoliberal, and I do this with my hands and everyone's seen it, but productivity and wages used to be mirror, right? Productivity would go up, wages would go up too. Then Reagan came in and there's the great divergence. Productivity keeps going up, wages flatline. Yep. Because of that, all the gains have gone to the richest Americans who earn more than the cap that you opened with, which therefore means that the billionaires stole the future of Social Security along with all those productivity gains. So the problem isn't teachers or police officers or firefighters or other Americans who've dedicated their working lives to service. The working people of America are not the problem. Immigrants are certainly not the problem. Immigrants coming to this country to work, if we had comprehensive immigration reform, again, over the billionaires who don't want it, it would be the single greatest policy for Social Security in terms of the stability of Social Security. You want more workers in the system. Yep. There's nothing better for workers than more workers, which is why the billionaires point at them and say they're the problem. Yeah, but the actuaries say the problem is the billionaires. So the solution has to be the billionaires. That's it.
That's it. I agree. Scrap the cap. Let's eat the rich and go on that path and fill the coffers. But Alex, I appreciate the time. As always, great stuff. This is kind of a big deal, isn't it?
It is a big deal. And I want to end with two things, which is the big fight is on. We're running a pledge campaign. We're going to get every member of Congress to pledge no cuts to Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. If they're not taking the pledge, we're running a billboard truck through their district. We're going to every senior center in their district. We're going to tell their voters that these guys are on the side of billionaires and not the people. And it was a big deal. And I get the emails and the phone calls and the texts from people who are like, you don't know what this means for my life, for my mother's life, for people that I care for. This is the difference between being able to stay in their own house or have to go live in an assisted living. This is a fundamentally wonderful thing.
This is a big freaking deal.
And we should build on it for everybody. Absolutely. Everyone should get it.
There you go. Alex, appreciate the time, buddy. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Rick.
Alex Lawson, Executive Director of Social Security Works. Check out their website, socialsecurityworks.org. Quick break. Right back. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1939. That was the day a new radio show began on CBS Radio.
Welcome to the Motion Picture Star's own radio program, The Gulf Screen Guild Show. With Jack Bentley, Joan Crawford, Reginald Gardner.
The show featured some of the biggest names in Hollywood. All of the actors' fees were donated to the Motion Picture Relief Fund. The fund was started in 1922 with the motto of taking care of our own. Proceeds from the show went to support the Motion Picture Country Home for retired workers in the film industry. These included actors, cameramen, set designers, and even security guards. These retired workers only paid what they could afford to live there. Eventually, the retirement home allowed working people from the television industry as well. Gulf Oil sponsored the program for its first 3 seasons. It was called the Gulf Screen Guild Show. Over the years, the show took on several other sponsors and names. It also migrated to NBC, then to ABC, and then back to CBS Radio. In all, it ran for 14 seasons and more than 500 episodes. In its early years, the show was a variety review. It included songs along with dramatic and comedy sketches. Later, the show recreated films for the radio audience. It was a challenge to get a whole film down to just 22 minutes. Films covered by the show included classics such as Casablanca, Arsenic and Old Lace, and Pinocchio. But despite the changes and challenges, the show raised $800,000 for the retirement home by 1942. The retirement home was almost closed in 2009, but continues operations. Workers in many industries have long found creative and collaborative ways to support each other and to truly take care of their own. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
I gotta tell you, I like what Alex said there. The reality is Social Security's in trouble. Not because the benefits are too generous, not because the illegals are taking the money, not because of all of the things that we've been spoon-fed, but because of the reality that we've allowed a billionaire class or a wealth class to walk away from paying into the system because we only tax work income, not gambling income on Wall Street. No. Capital gains is exempt. All of the way rich people make money, that's exempt. But you and me and other working people, the folks who drive trucks and swing hammers and push brooms and do all of the work that makes them rich, that is taxed. And for virtually every working person in this country, 100% of your income is taxed. Seems only fair that our billionaire class see a tax equal. Now, understand what Social Security is and what it's not. It's not a retirement program. Social Security was pushed as an anti-poverty program, which is why people who work their entire lives for low wages get a more generous benefit. There's some progressivity to the program. So if you worked for a minimum wage job all your life, you're going to get a larger percentage in your Social Security check than, say, someone who made 70 or 80 or 100,000. That's what we want. We want to make sure that seniors don't live their lives in poverty. It's an anti-poverty program. And we funded it through wages. And unfortunately, wages, as Alex pointed out, since the Reagan era, maybe a little bit sooner, but since the mid to late 70s, and then definitely during the Reagan years, deadline. Productivity still going up. So where's that productivity gain going? When the wealthy are dealing with more money and they're not having to pay it in wages, where's it going? Clearly, it's going into their pockets. And I go back to, and this has been one of those things that I just remembered. And I talked about it the other day. My grandparents in 1985, the only year that I knew what their income was, I could guess based on their contracts, but they made $52,000 a year in 1985, which in today's dollars is $150,000. A truck driver and a cashier. Today, a truck driver and a cashier, they're not making $150,000 a year. And thus, what you have is a scenario where all of the programs that are set up on wages are going to suffer. Social Security being at the top of that. If your average truck driver and your average cashier working at a department store, if they're making $150,000 a year with full health care, with pension, with vacation, with sick days, with all of the things that back then was the norm, you had a more prosperous working class, and clearly they were able to pay into the system. Right now, the struggle is just making ends meet. And healthcare costs have been an absolute killer for working people. So for me, the reality, you want to solve Social Security's problems? Pretty simple. Higher wages for workers, and you tax our billionaire class. You can put a donut hole in there if you want to for the moderately wealthy, but the people who have the money, that's where you go to get it. Seems simple to me. Want to hear your thoughts, though? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Want to hear it? If you miss any portion of the program, make sure you grab the podcast for our video content, freespeech.org. As always, thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people